Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Colin Oriens, and I'm the director of the Environmental Studies program. It's a real pleasure to welcome you back to another exciting semester of Hoke Cunningham Environmental Lectures. Um, this coming semester, we have a great lineup, and we encourage you to check it out. It's got a strong international flavor, including today's speaker. We've got Norway, Canada, Spain, and Bhutan all represented. We've got a number of Tufts alumni, again, including today's speaker, who are going to come back and share what they've been doing since they left Tufts. Topics range from art and the environment to conservation biology and its challenges to sort of how to make things happen legislatively to environmental justice. So check out the whole series. We today's talk is a result of a collaboration between the Environmental Studies program and the SMFA, the School of Museum of Fine Arts. So we're just super excited to be able to bring this to you. As always, we're super appreciative of our donors. The Hoke Cunningham Environmental Lectures are made possible to the generous gifts of Daphne Hoke Cunningham and Roland Hoke. Thank you. If you would like to receive alerts about the lecture series, we're going to put in the chat a link that allows you to see what's happening, but also if you're a student and you want to get the newsletter to get sort of updates, you can also go to the second link that will be put into the chat. So check out the links that we put in the chat. Also wanted to mention that these are recorded, and so you can go back and look at talks that we've posted. So you can go to the fall schedule to look at what happened in the fall, and you could also go back to things that will be happening this semester if you happen to miss one. I also wanted to make a quick announcement. I wanted to bring your attention to a series of lectures that the Department of Anthropology and the Center for the Humanities at Tufts Chat have teamed up for this spring, and they have an exciting speaker series called Global Racism, State Violence, and Activism. And in fact, tomorrow at noon, there's a really exciting talk, and we'll put that in the chat as well. The talk is titled Black Food Matters, Racial Justice in the Wake of Food Justice. And there's a registration link that we'll put in the chat. As far as the logistics for today's talk, it's the chat is disactivated. So if you have a question, put them in the Q&A you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the talk, you could also raise your hand and we could call on you and you could ask your question out loud. As I said before, it'll be recorded and will be made available to you. So I get to introduce Silvia Bottinelli, who gets to introduce today's speaker. Silvia Bottinelli has been on the SMFA faculty since 2010, and her work focuses on a real wide range of topics from food and art to public art, social practice, modern and contemporary sculpture, eco art, and so much more. And I'm so pleased that she recently joined the Environmental Studies Executive Committee. We're already benefiting so much from all she offers and her perspectives. So Silvia, thank you for facilitating today's talk by your alum, Elly Vadseth. Silvia.
Thank you, Colin. So I am very excited about the possibility to introduce Elly. I first met Elly Vadseth in 2018. Because her work was selected for the Tufts Art Gallery exhibition, Nurture, Reshaping Eco Art, which I curated, and it was supported by TIE, the Tufts Institute for the Environment. And since 2018, I never stopped following Elly's practice. Her ties to Tufts are very strong. She received her Master's of Fine Arts from the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. She was a recipient of a Tufts Institute of the Environment Research Fellowship for her work with river narratives, and was a postgraduate teaching fellow in media arts at SMFA. Among other venues, her work has been on view at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, Mountain Time Arts, the Frazioni Festival in Italy. And she's currently an artist in residence at Capillata, capturing change at a time of ecological crisis, and at the art and research organization Praxis in Oslo. And she's also working on upcoming projects at the Norwegian National Museum of Science and Technology. So Elly's practice is concerned with rebuilding cyclical relationships with local ecologies. Her work is in dialogue with ideas of post-humanism and ecofeminism that are expressed through intra-relational explorations and through the recording of eco-choreographies in contact with non-human animals and matter. So if you would like to view her work or samples of her work, you can do so by viewing her 2 videos that are now on view in Barnum Hall in the lobby, and they're going to be there until March 5th. So I'm very excited to be able to listen to what Elly has to say, and welcome Elly. I'm very excited that you are able to join us today.
Thank you, Sylvia, for that generous introduction. I am very excited to be here too. It's very nice to be back at Tufts in this virtual format. We kind of have had to adapt to new ways of being and new ways of interacting with each other during this pandemic. And I think this virtual technological revolution, if you might say, is one of the better things that have come out of it. In this presentation, I will talk a bit about my background and practice rooted in environmental movement, choreography, and multimedia video installation. Through the talk, I will share some works made within different environments in collaboration with organisms, matter, and atmospheric processes. I will also share some conceptual ideas and currents that inform the work, based in the local environments and also grounded in post-humanist and feminist ideas and thought. During my MFA, I focused my work within performance studies, dance, and video installation, working outside in the environments in Boston, Vermont, and Carlisle, Massachusetts. New to these environments, I started exploring gestural choreography and interactions with different matters that I found, matters of the everyday. I worked with snow during the winter. I danced with blizzards in the middle of Boston. And through these gestures and through these interactions, I got to know the place or know parts of the place, because these are micro ecologies that I was working with. And I became really interested in the way the body connects with its environment, both the human body, but also other bodies that we are connected to. So in this image, you see one of those performances. This one is actually made in Norway, because I went back while I was working with this thesis work in the US, so I was also reconnecting with the environment in Norway simultaneously. I'm interested in the knowledges that sits in the body and our connection to the larger web of the earth and the energies around us. The materials that I work with are often materials that are changing. So for example, in this performance, an ecology of fallen leaves, the leaves are in a process of decomposing, so they will become earth. And in the performance that I was doing improvisationally at first, the figure is making itself a dwelling in this space. So that is also a recurring theme in my work, is the figure is moving, it's building something, it's going somewhere, but it's it's in development. We're not sure. I'm not always sure what I'm doing when I'm doing it. I'm just exploring the material, and the material is affecting me in the process. And then I record it and make works that become larger worlds. In this piece, River Rights, I responded to a forming creek where I made other pieces. In imagining my own personal environmental rights, I worked in the space for several days, creating a piece where tentacular gestures of the place mixed with my own movements and reconnection rituals. The figure in the work is moving out and in of sync. And I was also exploring in the installation the way the technology both can emphasize our senses, but also make us not so much in sync with our environments. Following my MFA, I was, like Sylvia said, awarded a Thai fellowship for the work River Narratives, where I had the opportunity to work with the environmental organization Mountain Time Arts, founded by Mary Ellen Strom, who's from the SMFA, Dee Taylor, and Jim Madden. The organization makes public art spaces, public art projects that animate place, history, and new knowledge formations. And this work, during this time, I was fortunate to work with Anne Carlson in her piece, The Symphonic Body Water, where she made individual choreographies for each person in the community based on their everyday gestures with water. And this approach to choreography, an approach to thinking about the sequences of movement, is still very much a part of the work that I'm going to share with you soon, that I'm doing here in Norway. In Montana, I also worked as a dancer in the piece Cherry River, where the rivers mix, by Indigenous scholar Shane Doyle and Mary Ellen Strom. This piece also has really impacted the way I think about the choreography of environmental installations and experiences, and how I can involve different people in my creative process. And through that collaboration with people with different backgrounds, and also the place and the water, you make works that have like more collective power. During this time in Montana, I also did my own work. Here you can see a single channel video called Submerged Gestures, and a child seeing themselves in the projection and moving, actually. There was a lot of children interested in the light and the movement happening within the video. In this piece, the submerged gestures of the Missouri River was connected with the environment of the Oslo Fjord, where this was installed. And this is also something I'm interested in how rivers connect to larger bodies of water. Here's another installation shot of that piece. And now coming to this piece that I'm going to, this body of work that I'm going to talk about today. Currently, my work is engaged with water as a connective tissue and space for multi-species engagement and interactions of emerging cosmologies. Water moves through us all, humans and non-humans alike. And I'm wondering how we can treat each other and our environments affected by these flows, or waters that have been stopped from flowing. Currently, I'm speaking from where I now live and work, a small peninsula in the Oslo Fjord in Norway. The ecology of this place is changing dramatically. There's approximately 2,500 people and one grocery store. And a forest with several ponds surrounds the village. Coming back to the place, there's the English and the Norwegian mixing together. I have rediscovered a fjord unlike the way it was when I grew up. The alchemy of the fjord is shape-shifting. Since the temperature is rising, some species who used to thrive in the fjord, like cod and the blue mussel, are disappearing. The scientists don't really know why this is happening, but they think that it's a multitude of reasons. One is ocean acidification, and another is the temperature rise. I walk to the sea every day, and coming back from being away so long, I discovered these changing, and it really affected me, because when I was young, I went fishing a lot and I sailed and I spent a lot of time on the sea. So all these changes really impacted me, because I've not been gone so long. 6 years is a relatively short time in ecological terms, but the changes were dramatic. So one day I was down at the beach or in the marina, and I saw thousands and thousands and thousands of jellyfish. The whole sea was gelatinous, almost like a membrane. And the word membrane, it can also be like membrane, like the brain of the ocean. So I was thinking a lot about that visual image, and I started, after seeing it, I started to take a lot of pictures and videos during those days, focusing my lens through the water surface and below the surface, capturing many photographs and videos. And that is the start of, was the start of my new work in the ocean, building on my previous work with the rivers, because all rivers at one time or another will go into the ocean and mix with other waters. And this picture in the image here is one of those images from those days. And through just slightly changing the contrast and the colors, new things emerged. Like this one is, there's almost like a constellation. and the threads are going everywhere, but there's sort of an organization in it that I thought was interesting. So since this moment, I've been researching everything I can about jellyfish and how they affect larger ecological constellations. And this is another image from that day. It's a Stenophora drifter, or in Norwegian, it's called an American lobe jelly. These are not native to Norwegian seas, unlike the one, the Cyanea capillata that I showed you on the previous slide. This one is a new species to Norwegian seas. And in the 2 years I've been here, I've had many encounters with these beings. In the summer, when I swim out to a little bit out from the beach, I don't see anything in the water, but I feel these large blobs of gelatinous matter and beings hitting me, and it's a very strange feeling, almost a little bit science fiction like, and it makes me both concerned and also makes me kind of imagine the worlds that are emerging, and how jellyfish can be maybe one of the very felt and very visually perplexing or interesting signs or signals from the earth that these changes are occurring. And through my deep dive into the jellyfish research, I found that jellyfish are actually some of the most, or some of the beings in plankton beings that are the least researched, because people didn't think that they could benefit them in monetary terms. But now that they are becoming increasingly more present in the ocean, and they are actually multiplying, people are turning their attention to them. But the narrative is often, how can we get these beings away? How can these beings are stinging us at the beach, and we have to get rid of them? But I think that we need to look a bit deeper than that, and think more about the materials and the material constellations that are in the sea, and the reactions and the relationships we have with these beings, and the relationship these beings have to other beings. And in this, and to tell these narratives, imagination comes in. Imagination and deep listening, or presence. And that is things I'm very concerned about in my current work. And this picture, you see all of these constellations, or they almost look like, in Norway we have northern lights, so it's almost like there's some atmospheric process happening on the water surface. But really, these fluids are oil leaked from the boats that are heading out to sea. And these, the stars are organic matter and perhaps microplastics. I'm not really sure, but it's likely. And this image paints a new picture of what is happening that I'm exploring, and I want to move through in the future. The material itself, the oil, is also sort of a deep time material. Like you can imagine, perhaps, these gelatinous beings once falling down to the sea bottom for 500 million years ago or earlier than that, and ultimately becoming the oil that we have extracted and that we are pumping up from the bottom of the earth and fueling many of our societies today. And being in Norway, of course, this is on my mind, since Norway is one of the countries in the world who have benefited very much financially from this material and the extraction of this material. So these are things these entanglements and these different relationships and how you encounter these things in your everyday life is very much on my mind. That brings me to this first work, or this first movement-based work, I would say. Emerging Sea Imaginaries was an augmented reality work that I made this fall at a place called Sjøstrand in Asker. It was made as a site-specific piece outside on a beach in collaboration with creative technologist Blekksprut 1, or Octopus 1 in English, and the sound and voice designer Kaja Haven. And here you see another image of another jelly floating larger than life over the beach on a rainy day. And what I thought about when I made this piece was how was the resilience and adaptation of these beings, and what if they rose from the waters and became more present in our minds and in our interactions. And then I have a quote here from Donna Haraway. That's one of the thinkers that I've been interacting with in my work. And she says, "It matters what matters we used to think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to other stories with. It matters what knots, what thoughts think thoughts, what descriptions describe descriptions, what ties. It matters what stories make worlds, what worlds make stories." So these relationships and narratives and stories are something I'm working through in these works. And for those that don't know, augmented reality is a technology that allow you to work sculpturally in space through virtual space. So to access artwork, you have to use an iPad or a phone or something that can scan a QR code, and then you can see the work in space. Here's another image of another one of them. There were 6 placed in the landscape. And this is another one of the biggest ones. And you could enter the experience. You could enter into the experience, and the jellyfish would all be surrounding you, like a rotunda or a choir. And if you listen closely, you could hear the following voices. So these voices were made in collaboration with the sound and voice artist Kaya Haven. She also works with, she also creates sculptures that animate the presence of other beings. And in the making these voices for the jellyfish, we really thought about what we might not know, or what we can't maybe measure with scientific measures that we have today. And imagine the jellyfish singing to each other, or singing to us, maybe trying to communicate something. And as the viewer was walking around the scene in the space, the different jellyfish each had their own voice, so it would react, would be interactive, and the people in the piece sort of became the dancers along with the jellyfish. And that leads me to another series of works within the Sensate Bodies series. And that is a series of works exploring hydrochoreography. So I've been working with gelatinous beings and jellyfish, and thinking about their rhythmic and very slow movements through both horizontal and vertical oceanic space. There are many types of jellyfish in the ocean, but they have an amazing ability to drift with the currents, and are affected very much by temperature and food. But of course, we don't know so much about it. Everywhere I read, it's kind of, there's a lot of things that people are asking questions about. So this piece is the first piece in the first video performance piece in this series, and it's called Sensate Drifters. And in the piece, I'm wondering, what can we learn maybe from the jellyfish and their choreographies through time, through millions and millions of years. The human is so small in compared to this long time that the jellyfish has in their body. And the jellyfish also doesn't have a brain, which is, or it doesn't have a traditional brain, I would say. I think it does have more of an embodied brain. The brain is more in the whole body. It's a sensing brain, because I think there must be some very complex intelligence if you have survived for 500 million years in the oceans of several extinction periods, and you're still thriving and you're still adapting and moving through the water masses. So with these things in mind, I've been making, I've started these video performances where I work with different, I kind of mimic or collaborate or explore bodily relationships between my own body and these water beings through video and performance and installation. And I can show a bit of that and figure this out. Oh, I think I will just continue. And this is another piece that I'm currently working on in the same series. It's called Antibodies Water Flux. And the work is made during the winter 2020-2021. And the jellyfish in this time are actually are dead, or they are polyps on the seabed. So my figure is alone. There is no jellyfish to keep me company. But this piece is, I'm working with the same character, inspired by the jellyfish journey, and thinking about human journeys through these climate changes. The ice in the Oslo Fjord where I'm working, it becomes less and less of ice. Before there was, before you could ice skate from where I live to Oslo, which is an hour away. But this is no longer possible. At least it hasn't been in many years. But this winter has been surprisingly warm, surprisingly cold actually. So there's actually been ice. But this is kind of a false happiness because we also had a heat record last year of 2.5 Celsius, which is quite a lot during the whole year. So I've been working then with the ice in the piece Antibodies Water Flux, and also thinking about the health of the humans and the health of the environment around us. The work is going to be installed in the Norwegian Museum of Science and Technology in April in the oil exhibition. And the oil exhibition is currently called the Norwegian Oil Fairy Tale. I don't see any fairies, but that is the official name. And the reason why it's called the Norwegian Oil Fairy Tale is because Norway was not a very rich country before, but through the extraction of oil and through the technological innovation and the discovery of this material, the nation have become quite wealthy, but the consequences are equally serious. And the Norwegian government is continuing to give licenses to drill for more oil or to explore new areas of oil. And so using this as a conceptual entry point, I'm thinking, why not take over these screens with the oil platforms that are now static objects and entangle it with this character on its way through breaking ice. And I think this is also sort of emblematic in the times we're in with a global pandemic, because climate change, like my videos, is nonlinear. So that means that it can be 2.5 degrees heat increase this year, but then it could be 5 degrees next year. That's an example, but we can reach a tipping point where things are things get totally out of control, which you all, I'm sure, know. But I think this is something I want to work on in my works, to create narratives that are not from point A to point B, but have some more openings and entry points and room for questions rather than answers. And creating not the Norwegian oil fairy tale, but more the climate fairy tale, like how we can collectively move through these changes and have more care for each other and for the environments we are enmeshed within, and work collaboratively and interdisciplinary, and such as, for example, this meeting we have here, which is artists, scientists, people working in the humanities, and so and more. This is another shot. So that, I think, was what I had to share with you today.
Thank you so much, Elly. We certainly, for a really thought-provoking presentation. We have some people who have raised their hands. We can look at the question answer session if anybody wants to put their questions up. But if we look at the participants pads, I think I see one attendee with a question, Lori Shuela. If you would like to ask your question.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Elly. It was so interesting. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the character in the water and how it relates to your story.
Sure. So the character is sort of a metaphorical character, or an alter ego, if you would say, that performs or engage with beings or environments that maybe I would have been conditioned not to interact with. So the character is sort of like an empowering persona that goes into new worlds and explores. And that is also what I'm hoping through this performer's journey, that it would maybe inspire others to have their own journeys with different beings or environments. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that. Thank you for the question. It's a great question.
Anyone include your question in the chat?
I have a question, if nobody else wants to go. Thank you, Elly, so much for letting us into your practice. It's always fascinating as a non-artist to understand how your work, what the process is behind your work. And so you mentioned about the importance of collaboration, and also I think you work a lot with scientists and others, other non-artists in your practice. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the nature of those collaborations and how they inform your practice.
Sure. So right now I've been working mostly with, I've been part of a research collective called Capillata, Capturing Change at a Time of Ecological Crisis. And there's mostly, we've been a group of 8 artists and also artists, anthropologists, people working with scenography and architecture. So thinking about how like our practices and the things we maybe disagree on, or the common goals, and working together to find ways to affect or dramatize those goals. I have not, like in this current work, I'm very influenced by science, and I'm reading a lot of books and watching a lot of talks. And I'm also, but I haven't been collaborating directly with scientists yet, but it's on my list. But I want to really be submerged in this world that I'm creating, so that I can also, so there can be a mutual exchange. Because I don't want to only illustrate what the scientist is talking about. I believe that artists can contribute with artistic research, like different ways of finding answers and different ways of thinking, different ways of creating new methodologies and new ways of measuring things, or actually just saying that, or just finding ways to not give answers, but to ask more questions. And also creating those spaces for people that normally maybe wouldn't participate, or for some reason didn't feel welcome to be in the conversation. So I think art can open up those spaces. So in the future, I am very much looking forward to working more like we say in Norway, like sending the ball like back and forth with another scientist or architect or another person with different skill set.
Thank you, Elly.
Thank you.
We have a question from Mary Ellen Strong.
Hi, Emmy.
And feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Elly.
Hi, nice to hear you.
How are you?
I'm so glad you're here. I couldn't see you.
I I'm so glad to hear you. And thank you for such deep and powerful
Emmy, we can't hear you. Okay, so as we're waiting for, oh, okay, Mary Ellen, are you there?
I am, but can you hear me?
Yes,
Now we can. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just thinking about how Jane Bennett talks about the porous body, and recently she's been using this term, sensitive cuticles, and it's about a way of maintaining a discipline as a post-human researcher that can develop a language.
Mary Ellen, we're missing you again. You were mentioning Jane Bennett and researchers that develop a language. Would you perhaps, since we're having technical difficulties, Mary Ellen, would you like to include your question in the chat? All right.
that would be great to hear.
Okay, so we're gonna look for the question in the chat, Mary Ellen, and as we're waiting for that, I have a question too, and I would like to hear more, Elly, about your visual strategies. You're addressing incredibly kind of complex topics that highlight dramatic changes from the increased presence of jellyfish to the surfacing of oil and plastic, or the melting of ice. And you do this through images that are stunning. They're incredibly beautiful and mesmerizing and immersive. And so I would like to ask, what is the role of beauty in your visual tactics?
Yeah, that's that's a big question. So what I try to do in my work is to get the body of the viewer involved in the piece. So that is usually my prime. I really want the viewer to be involved and to slow down in their own body, to think their own thoughts in response to the work. So I think the beauty, I make things that are sort of uncannily sublime. They are maybe at first glance they are beautiful, or there's something like majestic about it. But then what I hope that when you look closer, or like you spend longer time with the work, you can think about the larger, the darker side of the beauty, because it always has. Nothing is ever just beautiful. I think it's like the oil fairy tale. Like in one way, it can be like a glossy thing. Like everyone is so happy that they find this material, but then in another way, it can be devastating and horrible for other beings and other humans and living in places where the water is rising and they can't live there anymore and they have to migrate, like the jellyfish is also migrating from waters that are getting warmer and shifting. So I think also a lot about, that's kind of a tangent, but like how to involve the body and mind, and how aesthetics and these scenes that I'm creating can contribute to that. And I also, in the beauty or in the large expanses, the human is always very small, because I want to create this feeling that the space around us is, and the ecology that we are part of, is so much more powerful than us. So, for example, with the climate crisis, in the end, I think the world is going to do fine. Like, it's going to just adjust, and species are going to go extinct, and some are going to survive. But I think the humans, they might not be the one that survive, because I think nature rebalances, so it also balances out what is not in balance with the rest of the ecosystem. So yeah, that was a long answer, but
it was a difficult question. Thank you. Colin, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thank you so much. It reminds me of how both artists and scientists are captivated by kind of a sense of wonder. And I think that your presentation really has wonder in two ways, right? You've got, you know, the wonder of nature, but you also make us wonder, and you try to pull us in. I was totally captivated by aerial jellyfish, and I was wondering if as a scientist, we all often want to know how our audience is responding, and I'm really curious to hear how the public has responded to aerial jellyfish in ways that might have surprised you, or ways that you expected.
so the piece was actually, thank you first for all these like wonderful questions. The piece was shown over a period of 4 weeks. So, and because of the corona, the pandemic, people were dispersed over a longer period of time. So I have actually not met so many of the people who experienced the piece. But I want to work more in this way, because I think there's really interesting possibilities and potentialities within the medium that you can't really see at first glance, but you can augment what is already, like, what is there virtually through your own technology. So it almost becomes like a looking glass into like potential or speculation. But the people that did see it, especially children and people that spent more time in the place and with the piece, they had to kind of orient themselves in the space, and the sound was, I think, maybe the most effectful to be in the experience, to be totally in the experience.
We're at the hour, and Sylvia, thank you. Elly Vadseth, thank you so much for sharing your work.
So much.
And I want to invite everybody again to Barnum Hall to see some of her work. So if you're going there for a class, or if you're walking through campus, please come explore her work. And clearly we need to spend more than a few seconds looking at it. We need to look deeper and imagine ourselves in the piece.
Yeah.
So.
Well, again, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, and everyone who joined, and for the questions. And I'm looking forward to Mary Ellen's response. I'm sure that will be good.
Thank you, everyone. And It's been such a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to everyone checking out the Barnum projections and screenings. Scale is going to be a friend in that case, because these are big screens, and the videos will be very immersive, will feel very immersive. So thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.